What is the biggest culture shock you've ever experienced? In India, they do this head bob, that part nod, part head shake. After 3 months of living there I still had trouble deciphering it. Sometimes it means yes, sometimes it means no, and sometimes it means I don't have enough information to give you a reasonable answer at this time. The Indian head bob is the magic 8 ball of non-verbal communication. In Japan, the level of trust is incredible. I went to a convenience store with no staff. You simply pick your items, drop your cash into a box, and get your change. There is an open box of money in the middle of the store. Coming back to the UK after 8 years, so many high-functioning alcoholics. I thought that was just a high school and uni thing. Nope. Grew up in a small town in the Midwest. My high school had 0 dropouts, pregnancies, arrests, etc. I never even saw drugs. Then I get hired as a cop in a ghetto area of a big city in Florida. Blew my mind. Moved back home 8 years later. Best decision ever. TL. Doctor. Floridians are bad crap insane. You don't just jump into Florida. You gotta ease into that crap. As a Swede, people here are in general pretty good at not interacting with strangers, looking out for themselves, etc. I was in Thailand during the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake tsunami, and in the aftermath, holy frick, so many Thai people were always helping me and my family, making sure we were well fed, had dry and not too dirty clothes to wear, helped us locate each other as we had gotten separated. I will never forget how amazed I was. It was neither my first nor my last trip there, but the fact that they were so kind and thoughtful and selfless even during a time of crisis, it showed the world to me and it has given me a permanent faith in humanity. Moving to Bulgaria from England. In Bulgaria, shaking your head means yes and nodding means no. You don't even realize how hard it is to reverse a lifelong habit until you try. It's really disconcerting. Also, if you screw up you look crazy. Imagine asking someone if they want a bag for that and having them nod at you while saying no. UAE, Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Dudes hold hands. Just being buds holding hands in the mall. Falcons are a huge thing. You can take your falcon on the plane if you buy him a ticket and he has his falcon passport. Not a joke, they actually have falcon passports. There are certain people there that if you make eye contact with you can be sent to jail immediately. No addresses. Yes, can I get a pepperoni pizza? I'm the second building to the left of the huge falcon statue. The Burj Khalifa looks like the Tower of Mordor. I'm more interested in the falcon passport thing. That kind of sounds awesome and hilarious. When a large Maori man asked to touch noses with me in greeting, the dude looked pee until I manned up and was the first to touch noses. Then he had one of the best smiles I've ever seen on a mountain of a man. It lit up the entire cultural center. Yeah, I had that too, and he asked me to exhale and then inhale his breath when you touch noses so we would be in each other. Great friendly and scary guy. I was teaching a class in South Carolina. I live in Minnesota, and sat down to eat lunch with all the guys I was teaching. Took a bite of my sandwich and noticed no one else was eating yet. I paused for a minute and one of them piped in that they were ready to say grace. I had never experienced group prayer before lunch, especially in the workplace. Definitely a shock for me. I grew up in Japan and moved to the US when I was 9. Before we moved, I'd only learned about the US from what was on TV, so I imagined it was this awesome suburban utopia where everyone was nice and all the houses had huge lawns and school was super clean and awesome. I had so much to look forward to and you could imagine how excited I was to move to the greatest country in the world. But we moved to Alabama. Grew up in Kenya. Never have been to the States. Am told that in America, people are so well off that you can just reach into a wall and get money out whenever you need it. Move here and find out they were talking about ATMs. Born in Korea, moved to US when I was 6. Realized pizza and hamburgers and hot dogs aren't the only things Americans eat. We eat other American food too, like tacos and sushi. I stepped off of an airplane in Japan and was suddenly, utterly, illiterate. I know it's weird because I've spent plenty of time in Canada, Latin America, Europe and even a bit in Africa, but Japan and to a lesser extent South Korea were just complete illiteracy, where everywhere else I can at least figure out what food I want, directions, and such. When I first moved to Ohio, I was in a convenience store buying a drink and I asked to buy some stamps. The lady behind the counter said please. I responded, may I buy some stamps, please? She looked really confused and sold me the stamps. Apparently in this town when someone does not hear you they say please and you are supposed to repeat yourself. I thought you just had to be super nice to people at all times. Met a Navajo shepherd while hiking in Utah. He didn't speak English. It had never occurred to me that not all Native Americans know English. Generally just the older ones or the ones that live near Monument Valley. They are referred to as traditionalists. Source: I'm Navajo. In America, strangers smile at you when you make eye contact. Back in my country, you'll get beaten up. This is tough for an American from the South. Southern hospitality is a very real thing. In university, in London, I went to the communal kitchen in just a pair of shorts. When I entered, a female Muslim floormate started screaming like crazy and ran out. I felt awful, until she came back a minute later with her headscarf and started profusely apologizing for not wearing it in the first place. I'm standing there mostly naked. She apologized for being rude, for thinking she could just hop across the hall and make some food in a few minutes without her headscarf on, and how she should have known better. Once, she let me in her room, just the two of us, though the door stayed open. We talked about our culture and the differences. We'd bonded a bit over the headscarf thing. That was super racy for her and I appreciated what it meant for her. Very friendly, very open, very progressive. She sounds pretty progressive. Usually they'd pick single-sex halls to avoid exactly this kind of thing happening. Originally from India, went to Finland on student exchange. First night there, I'm at a party and everyone is going to a sauna. I'm prepared with my bathing suit and all, and then bam, find myself in a mixed gendered sauna, with all the people I've been hanging out with all evening, butt naked. Then after 30 minutes of sweating, they all went rolling naked in the snow. Took me a while to deal with it, and finally get my swimsuit off. I ran into a similar thing. I'm American, was studying abroad in Europe and decided to visit my Finnish friend since I was in the area. We went to the sauna, ended up in a room with a bunch of naked Finns, and later ran out of the sauna and went skinny dipping in the Baltic. And this was all in October. I am from South Central Texas. Until I was 24, I had never left the state. Anyway, I get to Las Vegas of all places, and oh my freaking god, my entire family is disgustingly obese. We should be embarrassed. Seriously, I am not sure if some sort of convention was going on, but holy cow, everyone was tiny compared to us. Anyway, I got home, felt like crap and lost 40-ish pounds. Good on you, dude. I'm from the Northeast and visited my husband's family in Mississippi. They were shocked and said I was so tiny, not just thin but short. I'm average size female where I'm from. Mine was also in Japan. I was walking down a main street in Kyoto on a sunny summer day. Up ahead I see a police car and a policeman and a long folding table on the sidewalk. As I approached, I saw the policeman was flagging down certain drivers with his gloved hand. The drivers pulled over, quietly got out of their cars and calmly took a folding chair at the table. The police officer produced paperwork for the drivers to sign. They each read the paper and signed it and bowed respectfully to the cop. Then they got in their cars and drove away. I watched for a while longer and realized these drivers were being pulled over for traffic infractions. There were cops blocks ahead checking speed, then radioing the cop at the table with descriptions and instructions. I could not believe it. I kept thinking about how this might work in America. Every single driver would be screaming in protest. This is bulls. I wasn't speeding. I'm not gonna sign this. This is bulls blah blah blah. But the Japanese, they knew they screwed up and meekly and respectfully took their punishment. A small fine. That, my friends, was culture shock. It was even weirder than all the weirdness I saw in Tokyo. And there was a lot of weirdness in Tokyo. The drinking age difference between the US and the rest of the world is really mind-boggling sometimes. I'm American, and I spent a semester abroad in Austria, where the drinking age is 16 for beer and 18 for hard liquor. One of the weirdest experiences was being in a bar and seeing a bunch of 16-17-year-olds sharing a bucket of sangria and smoking. I'm from Canada, and I visited Germany recently. There wasn't much that really shocked me, except all the nightclubs. There are like 4-5 rooms. I'm talking completely separate, without different music and drinks and everything. You would take 3 steps past the entrance and not be able to hear the music from the previous room anymore, which was an engineering marvel to me. Also, it seemed like button-up shirts were somewhat out of style in the parts of Germany I was. The majority of people wore much more relaxed clothing. Oh, also credit cards are rarely accepted in Germany. I can go weeks without cash in Canada, but I wouldn't have survived even a day without cash in Germany. German men don't chat while they eat. In my experience, no Germans do. They eat really fast and you talk when you are done eating. It makes a lot of sense to me, but it was kind of shocking when I first got there. When I went to Germany, it was weird that girls were like getting away from me when we greeted. In Latin America, you greet girls with a kiss on the cheek. It's weird, cause I never really considered it a cultural thing until one told me. Before that I started to think, Jesus, am I this ugly over here? I'm from the western United States and I like to go on weekend drives to get away from civilization. Now in Europe, it is literally impossible. There are people, towns and history everywhere. I also miss 24-hour grocery stores. Nobody works when I get off work. Moving to Alaska a year and a half ago, I'd met a few Texans, but the love, affinity, and pride Alaskans have about being Alaskan is quite the culture shock, especially since I'm from Georgia. Studied abroad in Australia. Cheapest 30 rack of beer I could find was $35 for the Aldi store brand, and cheapest cigarettes were at least $20 a pack. Lots of boxed wine and not smoking while drunk on that trip. My father and I went to Japan on a business trip, and we went to some fancy restaurant. Our waiter was extremely polite and very attentive, so my dad left a generous tip for him. After the waiter saw the tip, he threw a fit. And I mean, he really did. He started screaming randomly at what appeared to be the manager and other workers. Apparently he took it as a sign of disrespect because he thinks we thought he was extremely poor, and left him the tip to help him out with his troubles. Needless to say, never tipped in Japan again. This is one reason why when traveling abroad it's very important to find out what are the local tipping conventions first. I spent most of my life in big cities. I moved to a small town in rural Ohio for 3 years for a job, just outside Amish country. Billboards everywhere saying that I am going to heck, or the true worship day is Saturday and Satan changed it to Sunday. I'm Mexican. Fiance is American, white. Her family cooks tortillas in microwave instead of heating them on stovetop. Pork? Can I take this beer outside, dude? You're in Germany, of course you can. American me was not prepared for that. While in New Delhi, my boyfriend, Finnish, and I, American, were invited to a New Year's Eve party at a hotel by the manager of the hotel. It was great. 12 people, drinks, music, fun. After midnight, people start dancing. A young man comes over and asks my boyfriend to dance. He laughs and declines, saying that he's sure I'd love to dance. So I get up and go to the dance floor with him, and proceed to dance about 2 feet away from him, not touching, just dancing in front of him pretty much. Everything seems fine, but it's not. For the rest of the night, people are apologizing to my boyfriend for how he's been insulted. It's so horrific that his woman was treated like that, claimed like meat. People mostly avoided me for the rest of the evening, with the exception of the hotel manager, who apologized profusely and actually gave me a Rajasthani puppet that he'd used in a performance earlier in the night, as a token of how sorry he was about my humiliation. We left quickly after that. The next day, the owner of the hotel sees us on the street. He comes up to us and tells us he heard about the way we were insulted and disrespected at his hotel and how unacceptable it is. We try to explain that it was my fault for not understanding what the dancing meant, but he cut us off. He wanted us to know he'd fired the manager for allowing that to happen. We tried to get him to listen to our side, but he was having none of it. Whoa, I'm Indian and even I would be shocked. Not sure what happened there. Maybe the hotel manager misunderstood and thought you had been put in an unsafe situation. Went from the US to Brazil. Was incredibly surprised how easy it was to get laid there. Everyone is so much more open with their sexuality, and it's not strange if they tell you that they think you're attractive. Funny you say that. I'm Brazilian, and when I moved to the US I was convinced I was some sort of sex god. So much easier to get laid. In Chinese tradition, it is rude to slurp your soup. In Japanese tradition, it is polite to slurp your soup. In Chinese that came across Japanese friend slurping soup. So things got pretty strange until I asked him about it and he explained. Every international Chinese student I know is so loud when they eat. Maybe they are just going balls out since they are away from their homes. Went on vacation to an East Africa with my wife, who is East African. I was out and about in town and dudes were glaring pretty bad at us. It was usually me, my wife, and her female cousin in the car. When we went to the market, guys were yelling into the car rude stuff and my cousin actually looked shocked and sad. It was untranslatable. My wife basically told me that the people thought I was on a sex vacation. We also went to drop off some beans and rice to their grandmother, and when it came time I lifted the 50-kilo bag, about 110 pounds, and threw it on my shoulder. Everyone burst out laughing because Mzungo, white men, don't work around those parts, and because, given the stature of the people, most of the men are like 5'6" and I am 6'1". It was quite the act of strength. And there was the one time a poor drunk woman kneeled before me babbling and grabbed my hand and rubbed in against her face. When I asked what is going on, my wife said she may have never seen a white person. We were well away from tourist locations, in person, and was trying to touch my white skin. I'm black British, but I never felt my race mattered until I went to America. I'm also from the UK, near London, recently moved to Cornwall and have hardly seen any black people. It's so strange. You have been visited by Sleep Doggo. You must now get a good night's sleep. Sleep well. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.